2, 1.
We wish you a Merry Christmas.
Oh, no, I'm not going to join you in three.
Come on, that was like, you guys did not actually join in
I
that.
went with dance moves.
I did see that.
And I went with refusal.
I know, you
So
did.
I'm not
Which
joining
is
in.
basically like church.
Yeah,
So,
in youth group. We wanted to kind of
I know, we wanted to just make
stimulate
you
youth ministry.
feel really, really good. Well, hi, everybody. Great to see you. Jen, great to see you.
Yeah.
Kara, good morning.
Thank you.
Afternoon for those that are in other parts of the world.
I like how Jen and I have coordinated my sweater with her water bottle today.
Oh,
If
yeah.
you look at us on camera, it's like the same color.
I know, and I just don't fit at all, which is fun.
Right.
So this is really great. Well, hey, we're really glad to have all of you with us for this really important webinar. And, you know, we were reflecting on a year ago, we asked you to begin to listen to your young people. And you went on that endeavor, and now a year later, you've come up with projects that you've worked on with new findings, new thoughts, new hopes, new challenges. We at Fuller call that learning. Yes, learning.
That's a special word we made up here.
I know, right? It's really, really good. So, and sometimes, I mean, with no seriousness, it's sometimes good for us just to remember that, hey, we have changed. We are different people because of the work that we've done and that you've done. And so thanks for that. So we're really excited to hear a little bit of an highlights of your work and all that you're doing. So we thought we'd begin by praying, and there's the best prayer in the room is Jen. So that's
definitely the most multilingual prayer.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So Jen, would you start us off?
Yeah.
Thanks.
Señor Creador, te damos gracias por ser un Dios que ama tu iglesia y quiere que nos unamos a tu misión y que hoy sea un día que podamos recordar tus buenas nuevas, que tú puedas estar con nosotros. Creator God, we give you thanks for the ways that you continue to call the church to be faithful. And we thank you for these leaders. And may this time be a time of encouragement and reflection. And may we walk away in the waiting of your son to come once again. And in the waiting, may you find us incredibly faithful. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Thank you. Now, Kara, equally as important as prayer are the logistics.
Well, that's a little heretical. I'm going to back away so that the lightning bolts don't hit me.
I know the plans I have for you, says the Lord.
Woo! Way to take verses out of context. By the way, that is not representative of the kind of training you get at Fuller Seminary. So I just want to distance myself from that kind of terrible biblical exegesis. So, but I do have a whole list of instructions from Caleb that I'll fly through it. So. We're not very strict people in general, but we are going to be strict today because we have a lot of you that we want to hear from, and we want to hear all that God's done. So please keep within the time allotment we've given you, and we're probably periodically going to need to say to some of you, hey, 30 more seconds or 1 more minute. So just know that we're going to be gently nudging you like that. We're going to be breaking in about an hour, maybe around 55 minutes after this hour, whatever time zone it is, 9:55 for those of you who are Pacific time, for a little 5-minute stretch break or quick bathroom break. Everyone's going to be muted except for the presenter. And then when we call on you, go ahead and unmute yourself. And then some of you have already found the chat feature, and well, at least I have, as has the FYI host.
Yes.
So we are hoping that more of you will chat in. In fact, if others of you want to chat in right now and say hi to me or to each other, that would be marvelous. Let's see who's going to get on chat first. Oh, there we go. Pete, there we go. CCOB, you're so fast. Way to go. Coming from Chicago. Oh, now there's more lag. Who's going to be next?
Yes.
Come on, Steve. Go, Steve. Go. His fingers are flying. Oh, there we go, Steve. Okay. So at least a few more people are in chat. We'd love to see all of you in chat interacting. And in particular, we're hoping that you'll respond to 2 questions for each project. What's one thing you appreciate about the experiment? One thing you appreciate about the experiment, as well as what's one question you have, okay? So something that you really appreciate, as well as one question that you have. We're either going to have time to interact with the presenter for just a moment or two about those questions, or the presenter can address them afterwards via chat. Either one would be awesome.
And we've got our amazing coaches with us too. We've got Mike online. Hey, Mike.
Woo,
and
Mike.
Jen right here in person.
Yay.
At least for us.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's funny how that works. It's like Inception.
That's right.
Right. Okay.
I'm here, but not here.
So I think that's all the logistics. Anything else I need to cover? Oh, Caleb, who's off screen. No,
Yeah,
okay,
Caleb
he's
is
not
smiling. Which is
smiling
good. Way to go.
and saying no. So
Yeah.
we're gonna move forward. And we want to start it off strong with Brandon from First UMC Little Rock. So let's give a warm welcome to Brandon. Woo!
Thank you for that. So I'm having technical difficulties here in getting up my PowerPoint presentation. So I don't know what we need to do about that. Or do you want me to just go ahead and just fire away with everything?
Is Shonda, well, let's see. Maybe we'll see, is Shonda ready? Shonda at Crossroads AME, maybe we'll give you a few more minutes there, Brandon, to work out those technical issues.
Sure.
To chat, FYI, host privately with your questions, or Caleb himself. Caleb, you're on there, right? As yourself? Yeah, either Caleb or FYI, host privately with your questions. So, but Shonda, are you on that and ready to go?
I'm on. I don't know that I'm ready to go. My Prezi is not something that I'm able to put forward only because it's not fully complete. But I can talk for certain. I can.
Well, why don't we go on to the next person and
let's go with Shonda.
Okay, let's go with Shonda. I always do what Caleb says. So
Yeah,
let's go with Shonda.
Shonda, we believe in you.
Woo, Shonda! Shonda, lead us.
All right. Hello, everyone. I am Shonda Nicole Gladden, Reverend Shonda Nicole Gladden. I am here in Indianapolis, Indiana. Can you hear me well?
Yeah.
Okay. And I help to lead the Crossroads AME Church, which is a newly merged congregation. Hopefully you won't lose me in this moment. And I'll see what I can do on this side in terms of being able to share just a bit. What I will do, I think, is go ahead and share the screen, and you can see a little bit of the Prezi. Hopefully, let's see. I got that there. Oh, but I have to escape and put it on the screen with you all. Let's start there. I'll share my screen with you, and then you'll be able to see what I can see. How about that?
There we go.
Yeah. So making life experiment to share here in Atlanta a little bit about the Crossroads AME Church vision and the plan of Sabbath making in the Crossroads of Black life. When we were in Pasadena, myself and my colleague, Michael Smith, we envisioned being able to put forth an opportunity for our youth to engage in a process of Sabbath making by immersing themselves in other types of Sabbath entities, Sabbath making entities that were not necessarily Christian. And so we had invited the leadership back at the Crossroads AME Church to take field trips to immerse themselves in the Sikh experience, in a Muslim experience, and a Jewish experience, and then also in our Protestant Christian experience. That was the vision. We had a great vision. We were really excited about it. We returned to the campus and had conversations with our leadership team. And then we even brought it forth to our district-wide denominational team. And we found ourselves running into some challenges here. So I'm gonna talk a little bit about those challenges and just report what we've done thus far, as well as what will happen in the next few weeks. So the team composition, as I shared, it was myself, Pastor Davis, who's the lead pastor, Brother Michael Smith, who I'll share a little bit more about him Michael Jefferson. I'll share a little bit more about him as the presentation continues, and Sister Deanna Downing. The team composition shifted as we considered, because we are a newly merged congregation, we experienced some unanticipated challenges. The challenges began because we're one church, but two congregations. This Way of Life and Coppin Chapel, they were the initial churches that merged together as an official merger in November of 2018. We began our first year journey as one church, but merging takes time. And though there were 2 years at the outset of the merger experience, by the time we began this project, this merger experience really still complexified our ability to go forward with making this a really rich experience for our young people as we anticipated. The competing goals was youth ministry versus YPD, that we have in our denominational setting, something called the Young People's Division, which experiences a denominational entity, as well as the youth ministry side. Who's on first is where the challenge came in, because individuals wanted to express their ability and their capacity to be the leader, if you will. And so it was a question of who is leading this. Those competing goals are coupled with the denominational and vocational challenges that these key personnel shifted into pastoral ministry elsewhere. That Michael Jefferson was assigned to be a supply pastor at another church, and Deanna Downing began seminary. So these two denominational vocational changes really impacted the ways that we were able to go forward with continuing as the vision as it was outlined. Project Crossroads, though, we still are envisioning and going forward with the vision, with new leadership. So the new leadership we brought forward was Sister, and that's where the presentation ends. And I think you're going to hear a lot more noise in the background because I'm in what I thought was a private critique room that apparently someone has says that they have scheduled a critique, although there was not a sheet on the board. So if you can bear with the sounds in the background, I'll try to press forward as well. But I do want
great.
I love it.
Thank you. What I do want to share, I'm going to stop the screen sharing right now for a moment so that you can see the Sabbath camp, because the Sabbath camp is the thing that's actually going to take shape in the next few weeks. And so here is where I will share that image with you. And so the Sabbath camp, let's see if I can open up this piece for you to see directly in front of you. Here we are. You'll be able to see this. I'm going to share it in just a moment, where you will see the PDF, which you'll be able to see it as a screen share. Let's see if this works for you. Uh-oh, did I lose you? I didn't lose you. Somehow you ended up, oh, here you are. So I'll screen share this so that you can see the reimagining of this opportunity is that we gathered our team, we talked to our young people, and we experienced that they still saw that there was a need to engage in Sabbath because they don't have these kinds of opportunities in places where they are given opportunities for adults to engage them and for conversations to continually happen. And so that was the challenge. And so what you see in front of you is this intensive exploration of Sabbath practices that we've shifted from being able to do it in an immersive content. Can you see it? Does it need to be bigger?
No, it's good. It's perfect. Good. It's great.
Okay, so we give this scriptural grounding of Mark 2:27 that Jesus said to them, the Sabbath was made for people, not people for the Sabbath, as well as Exodus 20:8 to remember the Sabbath by keeping it holy. That we share with the young people that Sabbath is defined as a time of rest. And as Christians, we're encouraged to engage in regular Sabbath-making moments, yet the rhythm of our lives tends to keep us from doing so. In order that young people can imagine spiritual fulfillment that is grounded in these practices, we corporately remember the Sabbath, if you will, and live into the holiness of making Sabbath together in this week-long experience of Sabbath making. So during the winter break, because we found that timeline was the biggest challenge, we had planned to do it at the end of the summer. Our young people already had plans for the end of the summer. So then we said we'll kick it off as part of the school year activities. Our young people were inundated. And so after surveying the congregation, surveying the parents, surveying the young people, we identified that the Christmas winter break, there was not a lot of activity already happening. So what you see here is Sabbath camp. And the young people are excited, the parents are excited, and I'm just ecstatic that it looks like we're actually going to get through this project together. And so are you all chatting me? Is that chat for me? I see chat coming up.
We'll go ahead and talk to, we'll be the translators of chat for you. So
okay, that sounds good.
About 30 more seconds, 30 more
Excuse
seconds.
Me? Okay, so there's a gentleman standing over me who says they reserved this room. Although that communication didn't come out, they're inviting me to transfer to a different location. So if we can just take these last 2 minutes, if you can put forth the chat information there, and I'll go forward. What is it?
So I think one question that's come up, people are really loving what you're saying. With your merging communities, was the
Yeah.
challenge with adults, young people, or both? We're curious about what that was like.
Yeah, it was both, because these are young people that are coming from two different congregations, and these two different congregations, they already had their peer group, and their peer group, if you can imagine, was rather clicked. And so to merge into a new peer group with new young people that they've never encountered, that they didn't know much about, making new friends is hard, right? And so making new friends with people who've already made friends, and then being told that we are supposed to be a community together, that's a challenge.
Yeah.
Great. And then one last question. So I love how the title of your project brings in, connects Sabbath with Black life. Are there particular elements in your Sabbath camp that you think are very informed by the fact that it's about intersecting the Sabbath with Black life?
Yeah, because activist culture is important in the life of our entire community. We have several activists who are engaging as part of the camp staff. One of our leaders from Faith in Indiana is taking on a very active role, and then myself as a leader of the Indiana Poor People's Campaign, a national call for moral revival, that I'm able to bring in those experiences as well. So yes, we are. Can you still see me? Are you just seeing the camp? Okay, because I'm moving over so that I can be attentive and be a good neighbor, but at the same time still be present with you all. We bring in the social justice components from, like I said, the Indiana Poor People's Campaign, the National Call for Moral Revival, and the Faith in Indiana.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Fantastic
Yeah,
job,
Sonda.
Sonda. Wow.
Thank you all so much. I really appreciate that.
Sonda, and as exemplified for what we just saw in the last couple of minutes, your ability to navigate and adapt and empathize and make a new way forward.
Listen, because that's what really has to happen in this work, right? So I thank you all so much.
And so just to continue to affirm the way that you've charted this forward, I think that so many of us can relate to having denominational things way outside of our control, and yet something you didn't mention, you also started a PhD program in the middle of this.
Oh, MG.
Yeah.
So I'm on campus right now. So I'm shifting to another place on campus. But yeah,
I have
thank you.
seen you do and redo the process that we did together at the summit so instinctively in the last couple of months that I just want to continue to encourage you in your instinctive leadership to chart forward new territory. And I am so thrilled that the heart and the theology and the vision that both you and your partner had when you came to Pasadena, it is still very alive and well in this Sabbath camp. There's nothing about it that I would go, oh, did you forget about this link? So it's still very thorough, very thoughtful, and very a response to the needs of the young people that you most love and encounter in your community. So kudos. May you hear the Lord's well done, my faithful servant.
I am so grateful for that. Thank you.
Yeah, so may you rest. Also, you as well, as the Princess Sabbath camp, may you also rest in God's deep delight over the incredible integrative work that you've put forward.
Great.
Thank you.
Well said.
Reverend future doctor.
Well said.
Thank you. Thank you.
So we're ready for Brandon, is my understanding. So let's give a warm welcome to Brandon.
So I emailed everything to Caleb, so we'll see how this goes here. All right.
Oh, that looks great.
Thank you. This is a very bare bones presentation, so I'm still trying to filter all my stuff down and all the stuff I've written up and everything, and we'll have that soon. But overall, so basically my situation is, our context is we are a downtown urban church in Little Rock, Arkansas. And the congregation is slowly trying to turn itself around from being stagnant to being active and missional, and thinking less of itself. And so part of that has trickled down obviously to the youth program. And so trying to get a small group to not be so comfortable with themselves has been kind of the struggle. So our focus was on hospitality because of that. Because even though there's a small group, if one person shows up, they seem to not want to engage with that person, even though there's obviously a new person with the group. So, so that's kind of the situation here. So what we did was, because of the size of the program, we've had to just integrate this into our normal Sunday night youth ministry. And so we did about 7 or 8 things that we did on Sunday nights. That was kind of one problem. Ideally, I would like to stretch this out over a year, because they were kind of like, oh, great, we're talking about hospitality again. But anyway, but some great things that happened where there were some connections made with the congregation, with different members of the church that they do not know. And that was great. And then also there was, it was great to see them uncomfortable. We did a couple of things. I took them once to a more, quote, missional church that is primarily ministering with people who are homeless, who are coming out of prison, who are in rehab. And it's not too far from our congregation. And so took them there. And so that caused them some discomfort. Also took them to a church member's house who was showing hospitality there. There's 2 people who like to do parties and things like that. And so they invited them, made them dinner, a fancy dinner. And the kids were just super weirded out because they were in these people's house they didn't know. And so that was just kind of a good teaching moment for them as well. And then also took them over to another youth group and just let them experience that, of how no one really greeted them and no one said much to them, and to try to use that to point out that they do the exact same thing to other people. So anyway, so those were just kind of a few of the things. We did have some scheduling issues that were problematic. We had 2 people who own restaurants that were going to come and kind of talk about that and what hospitality looks like with that. One of them being a member of the church. However, she was in a car accident, and that kind of messed up some of our stuff. So that kind of had to be flexible with all of that. And then just one thing we've not done yet, this was all leading up to them doing an invitational event where they would hopefully invite people and then be ideally hospitable to them. We will be doing that in 2 weeks. And we're doing a lockout, which I hate lock in. I hate all these things, but I was like, I will do it. So that's what's going to happen in 2 weeks. So if you don't hear from me again, it was nice knowing that. So
No, Brandy.
yeah. So anyway, a few things that I learned from this was, one, I was trying to create some games and activities and stuff that were big, and I realized, like, just doing some simple games that I was able to do with them were helpful. And then also just the juxtapositions of going to a missional church, that the congregation there weren't overly hospitable either, which in a way was kind of good, that they were able to find a place where they were comfortable, but also to kind of present that as, we get comfortable where we are, and how do we get out of that? And then when our church too does different ministries and programs for people who are homeless, and so they got to hear from what we do and how we show hospitality in our congregation. And then also kind of talking about, I was reminded to kind of focus a little bit on their experiences and also their ego. It dawned on me to present hospitality in a way of power, and that is something that they don't think that they have much of. And so I kind of presented as that they are familiar with this place, they know each other, and that is a form of power. And when someone else comes in who doesn't know these things, they are powerless. And are they going to share that power, or are they going to keep that power to themselves? And so that was kind of in a way to kind of tie into their ego a little bit as well, for them to hopefully to learn that stuff. So as far as the next thing here for sharing future practice would look like in our community, we had tied into this thing of the symbolism of pineapples as an old symbol for hospitality. We talked about that. So I was kind of excited, although it wasn't practical, was they were wanting to give pineapples to every guest that we possibly have show up, which I think we're not gonna have rotting pineapples sitting in the youth room. But they are definitely more mindful now of how they are and how they've been. And as most churches think they're super hospitable when they really aren't. But I think this is very much more in front of them. And I think their experience especially with the other youth group, will make it easier to be a reference point to have them recall how they felt, what their experiences were, and to not let that happen whenever we have guests and stuff to show up. So also with just recommending this for other churches, this was not a overall difficult thing. It's not very complex. Like I said, I would stretch it out for over a year, so it's just not over and over again in front of them. But the potential obstacles, I would say, would be for us, or for other churches, our location was helpful for where we are, being downtown, having access to these other churches and congregations, and just for them to being able, that they were aware of what downtown is like, and that there are people who are homeless and people who are different than them. And so, so I think that would, depending on where other churches are, that could be a different thing. And then also just us having a former restaurant owner in our church was very helpful too. And it actually also helped because she's able to tie in her faith with the restaurant, with hospitality and everything else. This lady was also actually, as a politician, she was a former state legislator, is currently the assistant mayor in the city. So she was able to tie in all these other facets too of just what it means to welcome people and be hospitable. So that was obviously a resource that we were very, very beneficial to have. So so that's just kind of the basics of what we did here. So.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Brandon. And I think two words that come to mind is that you unveiled and dismantled this year. So way to go. You unveiled what hospitality truly was, and you itched at dismantling what students thought they knew already, which is such a pastoral work. And so I want to ask Kara if she could highlight some questions or affirmations that were chatted in so that you can also hear some feedback from your colleagues.
Yeah. Well, I think many of us were struck by how hospitality was like this prism that you saw different angles to. So everything from those who are homeless, to a restaurant, to visiting another youth ministry, to power dynamics, to pineapples. So how did you come up with so many different aspects of hospitality? Like, that's just a very diverse, beautiful approach to hospitality.
The restaurant stuff just dawned on me when we were there in Pasadena. It was just kind of one of those extra things that I was like, okay, this is another aspect of this, and for them to see what quote worldly hospitality looks like, and also what the church's hospitality looks like as well, and even having and then just part of it was getting them connected to other people in the church. We had some of our normal greeters. I had them kind of come and talk to about what hospitality looks like to them, why it's a ministry, and they were even given tips about how they make notes of people and like how to remember who people are whenever they show up. And like this man just pulled out like a stack of cards so he knows who people are, and just being able to identify someone is so important, and to know them by name. And so I just felt that they needed to see different aspects of it. It's not just a, hey, how are you? Even though that is very basic and something they don't always do. But I just wanted them to understand also just, even scripturally, what these aspects of hospitality. We use some scriptural stories as well as history to kind of talk about hospitality. It was just trying to get different, learning styles, and just to present it, to keep it fresh, which is obviously always an issue with youth ministry, is keeping things fresh and somewhat engaging.
Awesome.
Yeah, love it.
Oh, well done.
Yeah,
very inspiring. Very inspiring.
All those ideas.
So we're now going to turn to April from Trinity Press. Would love to have you take it next.
Okay.
How's it going, April?
Hold on. I'm going to unmute.
We hear you.
You're unmuted. Keep
Oh,
going.
no, I'm muted. Okay. And I'm going to try and do a share screen.
Great.
Maybe. Okay.
Woo, way to go.
Whoa. Awesome.
Wait, is that what I want? Well,
Yeah.
okay, it's good enough. It's good enough. So we wrestled with this notion of Sabbath, and knowing that kids are busy and stressed and overwhelmed, and they feel like they have all these competing interests in their lives and all this pressure. We really wanted to create a space for that. And I'm going to ask you to indulge me because I have more than 10 slides, but I'll click through them really quickly so you can get a sense of the different experiences that we did. So we embraced our creative side by creating a space for painting.
Oh.
We got our hands dirty by doing planting. We wanted to create something that was, you had to care for it and you had to rest in it, but also like it was something that was yours. So we did succulent gardens and bamboo plantings. We rested in music. We had a piano concert that we attended as a group.
Wow.
We also created a space for giving back, knowing that there are people in our lives that can take our emotional energy, but then there are also people that give us emotional energy and support, and how can we give back to them? So we made these little cookie mixes in a jar there. This is one of my favorite things, is we went on a nature walk with a naturalist, and this is a northern saw-whet owl who was totally, the kids were totally enamored with being outside. We did some planting of seeds. We had a guided nature walk. It was just an amazing opportunity to be outdoors. And what you don't see in this picture is that it was snowing on and off that day. And as much as I thought they would hate it, they said that that's one of the activities that they found most life-giving, was being outside. But we also thought we wanted to create space for play, because play can be something that's restorative. So we did some bowling. We also did some jumping. So we did, this girl in the middle, she did make it up the 10-foot warp wall there. And then we also embraced our creative side as a way of finding some rest. So we learned how to decorate cupcakes.
Whoa.
And we also learned how to nourish and nurture ourselves by making pizzas. So those are some of the different activities that we did. But the bigger scheme of things was creating a space for routine. We realized the kids liked the routine of some structure. So we would gather and we would have journaling time, where every week they would journal about where they found rest, or where they found calm, or where they found peace. Then we would do an activity, and then we would kind of process that, as well as how is that a space that is restorative. And what they really loved, we would always end up playing like charades or Pictionary at the end of our time together, which is kind of random, which tells me that kids don't get a lot of time to just enjoy each other and play. So those are some of kind of like the guts of our experience. Some of the things that worked well were, well, let's say this. The things that I thought were going to work well that didn't were, they anticipated ones that were gender stereotyped. Like, I thought, who doesn't like to cook? And at the end, some of them were like, well, I didn't think I was going to like it because cooking is a male thing, or it's a female thing. But then at the end they said, oh, that really was cool. So trying to take a gender stereotype out of whatever activity was a challenge, but it really became an opportunity for conversation. The same thing was like for the cupcake decorating, the being outside with the naturalist, with the snow on and off. I thought they were all going to never show up again, but they loved it. Like, they said that they don't get time to just have someone say, oh, do you know it's this kind of tree? And think about the way God cares for all of us in this beautiful creation. And let's see, what else? I think that's kind of the crux of what didn't go well. What we learned is that the kids really do like trying new things. And it's that sense of, it does take energy to create a format or a foundation for this. But they all found it very life-giving, and they would end up saying, what are we doing next week with YMI? Which was like, oh my God, that's so nice. So yay. I'm trying to think what I think this is, I think our experience is something that really could transcend communities. We, this congregation that I serve is very diverse. We have a very significant membership from Cameroon and members from Uganda. And the richness that we are blessed with in terms of that diversity is really, really amazing, because they bring wisdom and they listen to each other in ways that the world says it's us and it's them, where here it's all of us together. And so that has been a really enriching piece of the project too.
Great, awesome.
Yeah, thank you so much, April. And you took this project, made it full, multifaceted, and went full gear ahead. And so I'm so glad that you're able to share the fruits of such endeavors that you put forth. So, a
lot of great affirmation and questions. I'll just highlight two. How do you handle kids' busyness? I mean, it's in your own busyness. This feels like a lot of different activities. So that's one question. And then how did you try to integrate scripture with some of these Sabbath practices?
Well, it was actually, the scripture part was really easier than I thought. It was coming back to the center of God creates a space for us to find rest. And we minister out of who we are. And so that's why it's important to do that. And whether their ministry is just being a good friend or a good son or a daughter, the scripture piece was a very easy piece because we kind of hearkened to that every single time we were together. The busyness piece, I sent out emails like twice a week. I made announcements. It's in the newsletter. It's on our website. Like, it kind of was exhausting how much I had to be in front of things. But that's really because I'm the champion and I want it to succeed. And I see that it will yield good fruit. So.
Well, great, April. Very inspiring. Awesome. Well, we want to go ahead and head to Pete at Christ Church Oakbrook.
Yeah,
you can take it away.
Chicago.
All right, awesome. How's everyone doing? Can you guys hear me all right? Okay, cool. So yeah, as I said, I am Pete. I'm at Christ Church out in Oakbrook and Downers Grove. And we focus on the practice of Sabbath and rest, and really rooted ourselves in Psalm 46:10. That was kind of our theme verse for our process. And really, as we looked at it, two of the big things that we wanted to address was that we can't encourage kids to practice Sabbath in our culture without also changing the perspective of the parents, right? We find that more often than not, the chaos and busyness is not self-inflicted, it's inflicted by the culture that surrounds them. And so we wanted to have something that was immersive with parents. And then second is we wanted to create outlets that would become less church dependent and more practices that could be done on their own. So let me jump into my presentation here. Let's see here. Is that working? Cool. So like I said, we focused on Psalm 46. And so the theme of our whole series was just be, period. We like to have really simple, clean slides. And we thought that communicated our point well and gave the kids the kind of the medium is the message kind of idea there. Let me see here. I'll go to the next slide. So we started off with really simple, just in our youth ministry, a 3-week series that was focused on slowing down, on being present. In that series, we integrated quite a few spiritual disciplines. The youth group program felt different than it might normally on a Sunday night. Much more reflective, much slower. And with that series, we also had 2 parent workshops where we involved parents in conversations of how to organize our kids' schedules, not on what is urgent, but rather on what is important, and then giving them tools and resources to help them kind of fight that temptation to push their children to succeed. And so that was kind of a baseline, is just to start with our students. The next thing that we did is we built these things that we called B boxes. They're very similar to a subscription box. We filled them with tons of tools for families to participate in conversations around Sabbath. And so you'll see in that box is that we created just family devotion cards. And so they're really simple weekly devotions to be done with families. They have a scriptural grounding, a specific part of, so we did be present, be still, be thankful. And so a specific one of those disciplines. And then we also had be alone. And then also had a fasting challenge for them each week. So we called it slow down, fast forward kind of thing. And so they would jump into a practice there. We had coloring sheets in there. We had a DVD with some videos that we had created for them, just reflective ones. I'll show you one in a minute here. We had a centering cube. That's that little wooden block there. And so it was just centering prayers, and you would roll it each morning, and you would have one of those centering prayers to focus on as a family. And then we built, you see kind of spread out on the ground, just a deck of cards there with Prayer of Examen, Lectio Divinas, and Visio Divinas. And the idea is that you would pull one each day and you would put it in your pocket, and that would be kind of your constant reflection. And then, of course, we had little swag and stickers and coloring sheets and that kind of stuff. So right at the beginning of our series, we launched that with our families and sent out about 160 of those boxes just so that they were in the hands of parents, in the hands of our students, and could be practiced on the day-to-day basis. This is an example. We filmed a bunch of these kind of reflective videos, and this one is a centering prayer one. And yeah, we just took our iPhones out on kayaks and did some video editing afterwards. And then my wife is doing the voiceover here, so real fancy stuff. And yeah, so we just sent these out to families just so that they could use them to guide their own devotionals. And then we also leveraged these in our student series, as well as we integrated them into our weekend worship with our adults as well. Just this period of time to focus and rest. And so, yeah, so you can check out more videos at christchurch.us/B, but we've got them all there. So, but yeah, and then we created something that we were excited about, is intermittent sermon series. And so we wanted to practice what we preach. And so in between each of our fall series at Christ Church, we created a 1-week focus on being. And so the sermon for those weeks would be just like 10 to 12 minute reflection on the Psalms. And we would focus on spiritual disciplines. Again, we wanted to kind of embed this in our church culture rather than just something that the students do in the basement. And so, 52 weeks a year, we tell people to do in our church services. And this gave us an opportunity to tell people to be still and to slow down. And so we did one on Labor Day weekend. We did one in late October. And then we did one on Thanksgiving Day. We have a big service here at the church. So intermittent sermon series with our adults. Off of our student center, we created this little space that we called the Rest Chapel. We actually commissioned a group of student leaders to do it, and they kind of did this deep dive on what kind of activities we would have in there, how we would integrate it with our youth program. And so they were super involved and invested in creating that. One of the challenges that we faced with the Rest Chapel was that as much energy as the students put into it, it wasn't utilized nearly as frequently as we would have liked. It's something where, youth group starts at 7 and kids get there at 7:05, right? And so very few were coming beforehand. So the only time the Rest Chapel was really being used effectively was when it was built into our programming for the night versus something that we had hoped would be a space that kids after school might drop by and jump into. So that's one of the challenges we faced. Another one that we're really excited about, we launched it yesterday, is a mobile Rest Chapel. And so we partnered with a local school to come during finals week and set up our Rest Chapel for them this is their student learning commons. And so all the same activities that we would have in our other Rest Chapel, we had here in this learning commons. And so this is set up for the next week there at one of the local Christian schools, and kind of beta testing it to see, hey, is this effective? Is this something that we would continue to use and kind of spread to other schools and potentially focus more on mindfulness and allow it to become something that might be picked up by a local public school as well. So we're excited to see the results there. That's to come. It was launched yesterday. And part of that is our high school pastor went to their school chapel and introduced it and talked about it. So kind of a fun opportunity there. And then the final one is coming up. We have, we partnered with our adult discipleship team to create a one-day silence retreat. And so to have our student leadership team come and participate with that. You know, to speak about kind of challenges that we've faced, I think that, you know, we probably resonate with a lot of the challenges that others have faced, is that it's difficult in a short period of time to really shift culture from being a culture of frenzy to a culture of being. And so we've felt that challenge. And so while students really articulated this as a felt need, while they really enjoyed it there, I'm not sure that it's been integrated at a level where it's a part of their practice in their day-to-day. I think there are some students that have really enjoyed this and latched on, and then some students that it was just another series that we did or another initiative that we did. And so, you know, for us, the proof is in the pudding. How do we integrate this in the longer term? How do we make those rest chapels something that we could use in other spaces? What does it look like to create follow-up boxes for families that they can use, and just kind of keep this at the forefront without beating the dead horse there. You know, what we've learned is that kids are really excited about this. We didn't have any pushback in our kind of change of pace with our youth ministry to go to slower and more reflective, more thoughtful. Kids really gravitated towards that. They got excited about it. Our student leaders were in particular excited about this whole process. And something that they really loved. And I think, you know, another learning that we had is that, you know, our excitement does not necessarily translate over into, you know, community-wide excitement. And so, you know, as much as we had integrative pieces with our broader church community with those series and those types of things, I think that we were kind of in some ways in that regard, you know, a mile wide and an inch deep. And I think I would love to see a deeper level of integration where that's a true value instead of just a like, hey, we're going to support our team that's tied in with Fuller and doing this project. So we had a ton of fun doing it. I think that as you see, you know, we love doing a bunch of different kind of experiences to see what kids latched onto. And I think if we did it again, those boxes, I think, were really effective, and the videos ended up being really effective. And then we're hopeful that the mobile rest chapel in the schools will be something of value, because again, it brings rest into a place that's normally chaotic. So,
yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah. Wow, Pete. You know, Pete, I loved from the beginning, even at the summit, I remember your team trying to figure out how to put all these pieces together as you came up with ideas. And I think my biggest fear was, and as you and I talked about it, was like, I don't know, Pete, this is a lot. I don't know. And I love the way you have weaved these different pieces together. And I think you've also had a long-term vision that, as you said, you obviously are trying to do something in these 10 weeks, but I think you're setting your community up for something even longer than that. So I just really appreciate the vision that you cast with this and the beautiful work that you've done. Thanks.
A lot of great affirmation and questions in the chat, Pete, so I encourage you to visit that and answer questions. But a theme in the questions is folks wondering how the families did at actually doing the bee boxes. Did parents feel comfortable doing it? Did kids engage, or did they kind of roll their eyes? How did that actually work out?
Yeah, I would say, like with most things, we probably had 25% of our families that got them that really invested in them. We wanted to make them incredibly simple for families to use. And so that was kind of that video integration, those really simple cards that, you know, could take 1 minute or 20 minutes. So the families that did use them liked them. We specifically commissioned, we have a student leadership team of about 35. And so we specifically grabbed those families and said, hey, we want you to commit to doing this for 30 days. And again, we probably had about 50% retention there. And so I think they enjoyed them. I think that to be more effective, we probably need to put out boxes on like a every month kind of basis, which is, you know, daunting and overwhelming for somebody who's that's not their job. Because I think that like right when you get it, they use that and utilize it really heavily for a week or 2 weeks. If you get further and further down the road, unless they really gravitated to one specific piece of that, it kind of faded a little bit. So, you know, I think it was a mixed bag, and I think that overall, though, families really enjoyed them. I don't know that it had the longevity that we maybe hoped for.
Yeah. Well, Yeah,
Excellent.
thank you so much.
Excellent.
Great.
All right, we're going to move now to Matt at Lake Grove Presbyterian Church.
Northwest.
I think I'm unmuted now on my phone. Can you guys hear me?
Yes,
Yep.
you can.
Okay, cool. Wonderful. Well, let me try to do this screen sharing type thing, which should be good. Oh, there, share button, and share the desktop. Share. I can see myself. Hi, everyone. I'm Matt from Lake Grove Presbyterian Church out near Portland, Oregon. And okay, I think we're good. We actually went for the practice of lament. And we started with a flawed narrative that our students were experiencing. I feel unsafe because I'm different, so I must survive alone through fight or flight. We have had quite a few people in our group that are struggling with their sexuality. They're struggling with anxiety and depression and busyness. And we wrestled between choosing Sabbath or choosing lament for kind of going to this Jesus-centered narrative of I feel safe to share my hopes, fears, pain when I know that my faith community sees me for who I am, accepts me as family, and promises to walk with me. So we chose to go with lament. And this is the group that ended up going on a retreat, which was the culmination of our series. And this is about half of the group at a hike that we did at the end. We went to Pacific City in Oregon, and they have this beautiful cape that you can walk out to. We kind of prepped for this series in a lot of different ways. One of the resources we used was just a structured kind of prayer of lament, which talked about the core elements of most laments that you find in the Psalms and even in a lot of other scripture. And the first thing is like an invocation or addressing to God, which a lot of people kind of said, hey, God. And then what are you lamenting? Is it for yourself? Is it for the community? It's remembering God's past mighty acts, expressing belief or trust in God, and then petitioning God to do something. What are you asking God for? And then making a vow or promising to God, which was kind of optional as we looked at most of the Psalms. So we used this resource in order to help students write this. And we started with a communal lament where we as a whole youth group wrote a lament to God. And I believe that's this. Hey, God, we lament the stigma around mental health, not knowing where we fit, who we are, or our purpose. We are overstressed, scheduled, and we live in a fake world. You've helped us grow and be safe in the past, and we trust you. Give us resilience and empower us to be hospitable. You are good, and your well refreshes us. So this is after just kind of introducing the concept of lament. We started with the Psalms, and at the end of a teaching, we got together and just asked people like, what is there to lament around society? What's affecting us? What's affecting our group? What's affecting our school? And this is kind of what cropped out of that. And then we also gave everyone a journal to write the laments in over the course of the 10 weeks. And those came in handy. One of the things that we did was we started a post secret, and we sent that to the facilitator of the retreat. And a post secret, if you're not familiar, is basically you write out on just a postcard a secret that you haven't told anyone. And we gave instructions for students to make these like what is something that's lament worthy, and we made them anonymous, and then they would mail these to the speaker. And there was some really crazy ones. One card said, I've gone on dark anonymous websites and have heard some really horrible things. And that's something that this student was lamenting. A lot of people were wrestling with their sexual orientation. One card says, I spend 20 minutes alone in my car crying every day. So I sent these, well, they actually addressed them and sent them to the speaker themselves. The facilitator who used this in their teaching to talk and prayed over them as he decided, like, what could he facilitate to a group of students like this? And we ended up going over the book of Amos. The retreat was, it kind of started with just going and addressing some of the post secrets. And we made it anonymous even further by not just having our youth group fill out these post secrets, but we invited, there's about 300 to 400 students that come to a pizza lunch gathering at 2 different schools in Lake Oswego, and we invited them to fill out post secrets as well and send them in. And so we kind of went over, these are the things that you guys and your friends in your city are going through. And so we spent the time going from a big macro vision of, we wrote a communal lament, and we encouraged students to be writing laments on their own throughout the week, to the next week we went to small group laments. After we did the post secret, we broke out into small groups and wrote smaller communal laments. And then from then on, we were encouraging students to write laments on their own and giving them space and time during our youth group to do that as well. So a lot of it was just teaching what the process looked like and how can you incorporate in this. And it was, we had some challenges. We have some students that were adopted that were raised as Coptic Christians who just really didn't feel it was appropriate to talk to God in this way. Like, I can't tell God like my deepest, darkest things. Like, I need to express only joy because he is so good. And so there was a bit of a struggle with the students, but luckily we didn't have any struggle with parents on this as well. Finally, at the culmination of the retreat, we're like, what do you want to ask God for? As we structure like a lament for this weekend, as a lament for your life, like we've gone through trusting God, addressing him. We've gone through our laments. We remember God's mighty acts, but what do you petition God to, or what are you looking for God to do? And so everybody just wrote one word about what they wanted from God. They wanted to be understood. They wanted love. They wanted hope. They wanted confidence, meaning, acceptance. And if you remember, going back to the narrative, it had a lot to do about acceptance. And so further on, continuing on from, we culminated the retreat at about 7 weeks in. We still had a few weeks, and we are just actually wrapping up right now. And so the rest of our series has been on how do we trust each other as community? Because that was one of the greatest challenges that we had, was actually having people be honest with their laments in groups. Because there has been, it was the first thing that we did in the fall. So we had a bunch of new students coming in, and that was a challenge from it. We didn't have the most solid relationships where people felt they could be open and honest. And so some students said that they did feel pressured to share because we were saying, hey, share, this is a community that you should be sharing with others. This is a community where we should be bearing each other's burdens. This is a community where we can pour out our hearts to the Lord, but we can be open and honest and support each other. Because that was the Jesus-centered narrative that we were trying to get to. But we did have students feel.
Matt, if you think about 30 more seconds, that'd be great, please.
Well, that was my last slide right there.
Perfect.
So that was the Jesus-centered narrative that we were trying to get to, and from then on, going from lament into community has been a really good link, because people see the need for intimacy and they see a need for the trust that needs to be built within our community.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks, Matt. It was really great. Love the different pieces you have. Hey, just a couple of things. First of all, I appreciate that you went for it. I mean, I know as you thought about the different practices, I know this was something we were like, gosh, are we ready to actually receive and listen to what our students have to say? And I really commend you for your courageousness with that and giving space for students to really be honest, which I know that's on your heart. So I was pretty excited about that. One question maybe for the group is, how did you prepare your adult leaders for this?
I was wondering the very same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you're asking, I mean, it's a pretty big thing, right? To ask students to step into this and actually have your adult leaders like hold that space with them. So how did you do that?
My adult leaders, I'm amazed by them, and I think our time in the Tenderloin actually really prepared them this summer for it, just ministering in that environment. But before we actually started the year, I pulled everybody together and we gave a vision for, hey, this is what we want to do, this is where we're going, and all of our leaders were like, this is so needed. And we even actually brought in a couple parents to speak on mental illness and a few other things, and the leaders were really brought in. But just bringing them in with a meeting beforehand and letting them know this is where we're going to be in the fall, and it's an experiment. Let's see where it goes.
Yeah,
awesome.
That's awesome.
Way to go.
Thanks, Matt. Great work. Great work.
Yeah.
Oh,
Thanks.
Matt has brought us up to the point of a break.
Woo!
We got 5 minutes.
Wow.
It's 10:01.
What a great way to end. That was
I know.
ending strong. Too.
I know, it really was. So we're going to take 5 minutes, which according to my watch is going to be at 7 minutes past the hour. So whatever hour you're in, 7 minutes after that. So we will see you in 5. So enjoy your break. We'll see you in a minute. 2, 1. And we are back.
Welcome back, everybody.
I think we gave you an extra minute.
I think so too.
Yeah,
bathrooms were a little crowded.
You're welcome.
Yeah, bathrooms were a little crowded
right.
here at
I know.
FYI.
That's right. I know. Well, good to have everybody back, and I think we're gonna jump right in, right?
Yeah.
So,
we actually have a video from Pierce from Providence Church in Tennessee, and Pierce wasn't able to be with us today, but he has this wonderful video.
Yeah.
So we'll just go ahead and watch it and enjoy it.
My name is Pierce Straight. I am the student pastor at Providence Church here in Nashville, Tennessee. And so our project was around lament and around this idea that we were calling to remove the mask that students wear to be accepted, to be loved, and et cetera, and to remove it, to really begin to live in the imago Dei that's within them, right? That's uniquely within them. And so that's kind of what we set out, and we understood that taking off the mask would be a lament process. And so that is where we started. That is what we set out to do, and that's hopefully what we learned along the way on some of the stuff. Some of the things that happened during the project that went just really well is kind of how we set up our groups. This all happened within our small group setting for the most part. Excuse me. And so some incredible things is students began, after a few weeks into us having discussions around lament, having discussions around the image of God, begin to share in a new way as we were honest with them about this is why we're having this conversation, right? We're not just having this conversation to have the conversation. We're having this conversation because we believe something great is within you, and that is who God is, and living your best life, living the life that God has called you to live, is expressing that imago Dei out, right? And so all of us, leaders included, we do a bad job of covering that up. And so two things have come up of this I can think of specifically is one, we had more students that we feel are responding to a call on their life in ministry. We've had multiple students meet with us throughout the semester and say, I think God's calling me into ministry. And as we dig down deep into why we think that is, or why they think that is, we want to affirm that, obviously. But one of the things is that they're hearing the truth of who God is and who God is to them and who God's created them to be in, and they're blown away by that in a new way. You know, I think one of the things that this semester, this project has done is it's made it even more personal for our students. On the other end, taking off these masks have been really painful. And I heard preached the other day that you can hold grief and gratitude in the same hand. And that's really been what the semester has been for us. This up and down, not single track, right, where there's been these great highs and these great lows, but there's just constant track of like both and. So like we've had our high highs and our low lows. One day I met with a girl at Starbucks, and she was one of the first ones to say, I think I'm called into, I feel like God said, you know, he's calling me to be a pastor. We begin to celebrate that and walk into that and just came out of that meeting joyful, and then left right from there and went to the hospital with a kid who had attempted suicide and was in the psychiatric ward. And so the pain that it takes to take off these masks was more real than we thought, and maybe came in a little naive in that. And so some of the things that we learned in that process was, one, how we had to go back to the real basics of the truth of who God is to each and every one of us. It's really hard to take off the mask if you don't know what you're taking the mask off for, right? Like, what's the benefit of taking off the mask? If I'm going to risk exposing myself, then in that sense, then what am I willing to do that for? And so a real call back to biblical truth, a biblical understanding. In fact, one of the things I'll talk about in a little bit that we're doing out of this is we're going to start Alpha for our students. If you're not familiar with it, it's just a great program that's coming out of HTB Church in London around the basic conversations of faith. And so we already have a lot of kids signing up for that. So that has been incredible. The second thing is, as we've journeyed along with parents in this, the parents need the same thing that we're asking our students to do. And so some parents are all on board and family discussions are going incredible. And then some families are not really wanting to participate because that means mom and dad have to remove the mask. And so coming alongside families have been, that was one of the things Kara led me in early on, is like reminding me about that. And so we've really tried to step up our game in that. And we've seen that kind of discussion between, hey, it's been really great for some families, and some families, well, it's not taking steps forward just because, well, mom and dad don't really want to do the work either. And so as we think about the future of this practice in our own community, one of the things that we look at is this Alpha course we believe is going to be something we run constantly. And so we're a United Methodist Church, which means we do infant baptisms, which means we have a confirmation process for students to go through in the 7th grade, which just means we don't believe, obviously, that baptism saves the infant, but it's God's identity being poured out into that infant, and then their confirmation is the time they make it their own, right? So Alpha is gonna do that, we think, for a rejuvenation for that in our high school students as well. And so they went through confirmation. A lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of them went through it in 7th grade. But now they're going back through it in high school. And kind of that refounding, that digging down deep is going to be really good. Some of the practices we've learned about the style of questions we've asked and the way we have built our small groups this semester, being intentional around community and around welcome and hospitality to open up the forum to have the conversation. It's something we're going to keep into our program for a very, very long time. And so finally, whether I would recommend this practice for your church or community, of course, I think all the practices that we're doing would be great for that. I think this one in particular, I think in a season and culture that we're in, not to be political, but where truth is, everybody has their own truth, and I think we're getting called back, at least in our youth ministry, and I think youth culture, we're getting called back to we need to know be grounded in some real truth. And so what can we hold on to? What becomes sticky in a sense? And so as we do that, as we learn those truths again in a new way, in a setting that is able to be welcoming and be open and be a safe place to talk about all those things going on, I think we're experiencing the hope and healing and wholeness of God. And at the same time, that's been great excitement. And also it's been some really hard times in our semester, but all to the glory of God. And I think all of us need to remove the mask, myself included, and see God at the center of it.
All right, thank you, Pierce.
Yeah, Pierce.
I appreciate how Pierce reminded us of the pain that students go through and all that they navigate, and how taking off those masks was even more painful than they were expecting. So
yeah.
All right. Well, we are going to, since Pierce isn't here to respond to any of our questions, we are going to go next to Kevin at Princeton Alliance. So,
hey, Kevin.
Kevin, take it away.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, yeah. You can.
Awesome. So the practice that we took on, I'm in my bedroom, by the way. If my son comes up, it's all good. He's 3 years old. I'll take care of it. That's not my jewelry behind me. So we took on the practice of testimony. And one of the things that at the cohort in Pasadena, I was able to uncover with you guys is that we had sort of like a golden calf, an idol in our ministry, which was our once a year retreat up in a Young Life camp in Lake Champion. And we're in Princeton here. And so we go to upstate New York to this retreat every year. And actually over 15 years ago, as a 7th grade student, I was saved at this retreat. And now I'm also going to the youth ministry that I'm now the youth pastor of. So I have this connection with this youth retreat itself. And then it was kind of a huge realization to say, oh man, this is actually kind of an idol, because what happens is on that Saturday night of the retreat, you know, everyone just unravels, they cry, they get all this out, they share these stories, amazing stories of what they've been going through. And all of our students are exposed to testimony, these stories, but not of, obviously, you know, I think when we think of testimony, we think of how somebody came to Christ, right? But these are stories of, you know, trying to find God's faithfulness in the midst of messes, right? And so that's what we really wanted to create outside of just this idolized Saturday night at Lake Champion, because we were hearing students all year go, yeah, I just can't wait for that Saturday night so I can just let it all go, right? And I'm like, we gather, you know, twice a week. And, you know, we want to create a culture of, hey, I guess the main phrase that we've been thinking of is, even if he is still, right? Even if and our false narrative is, I am, my identity is the school that I will get into. So in Princeton, there's high academic pressure. It is a very common, almost the norm to get into Ivy League here in our schools. And so I am the school that I get into. And so we wanted to basically create a new narrative of, even if I don't, right, he is still faithful. He still calls me a son or daughter of the living God. He is pleased with me. And then I think just the whole idea in sharing these stories is that they could grab on a regular basis that we're not perfect, but we are worthy. And so what we set out to do is actually create a regular rhythm of sharing stories that don't necessarily have a bow tied at the end, where they can be kind of restored in this hope that even if things don't go your way, you're still whole in your identity of Jesus Christ, in Jesus. And so we actually bought a pretty high-end camera to create a video production room. And I kind of low-key wanted this for our church as well, to be able to share testimony in this way too. So our church is actually sharing our 3 videos that we've made in main services, which is pretty huge. That was our project to create these videos. We've created 3 of them, and our church is a pretty large church, especially for New Jersey. We're just short of 2,000. And so our videos have been shared. And so what we decided to do was, hey, if we want to set this culture, what better to start than shooting either my story or my wife's story? And so our first video is my wife's story, which is a perfect kind of, we realized a mix of academic pressure. The other thing in our area is an opioid crisis, mental health. And her story has a lot of loss. It's pretty intense. And so we said, let's start with a bang. Let's see. What I didn't anticipate was how hard it is to do a nicely done video, because I'm not skilled at all in this area. And so I used one of our video production kind of third party that we hire out for other videos to help train me in iMovie, just simple iMovie. And so these videos are a hybrid of our team being trained by him. His name is Rolando. And so he's been a huge help. I kind of pulled him into the project and didn't give him an option. So yeah, so, and what we've seen is just in our small groups, students really having that moment of, whoa, I had no idea that was going on in that person's life. We've had live stories shared, these videos shared. And the night specifically, my wife's story was shared. There was someone who we had a senior girl invite to in the last period of her study hall, in her day in study hall. And she was like, you know what, you've been telling me for months, let me just go. And up until this point in her life, my wife's story was very similar to hers. And she just kind of unraveled, saying, you know, okay, so there's people that believe in this God and follow him regardless of these things going on in their lives. Like, he can actually see somebody through this. He can have a purpose through this. And that was a huge night. So those are some of the things that we run into and that we've seen. And I thought it might be encouraging for, if I can kind of share my screen and show that first.
Great.
If I just share the video, do you guys get the audio automatically, or do I have to do something for that?
When you click share in the bottom left-hand corner, click that box that says share video audio.
Optimize for full screen video clip. Share computer sound.
That one, share computer sound.
Okay, let's do this. Sorry, guys.
I think we failed to mention also that Jen Guerra has turned into Caleb Bruce. So I realized that during the video.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right. Wasn't Caleb?
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Caleb.
Hey.
Yeah. For those of you who are wondering if you were seeing something,
Right.
yes and no.
Need another
Jen Guerra's now a
coffee.
taster.
Yeah, exactly.
I thought that would be cool.
Can you guys see?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, let me see if this maybe in the chat, if you can let me know that the audio is working, then I can just not pause it.
Okay.
All right, let's see. All right, here we go.
I'm the oldest of 3 siblings. So me, my brother who was 2 years younger, and then my sister who is 7 years younger. By the time I was 3, I could dial my grandmother's phone number. She taught me how to dial her phone number because when my parents were drinking and it would get out of control, so I could call her and, you know, she would come pick us up. And so, you know, just things that, I mean, a 2.5-year-old shouldn't know or understand. I knew who God was, and I think I believed in him, but I didn't really know much about him. Jesus, like I said, was a fictional friend, and that's it. By high school, I started drinking, but I told myself, like, you know, it's not a thing, it's just what high schoolers do. You know, we would party on the weekends. It was just very social. I didn't see it as any sort of issue. So I really, at this point, started to question just a lot, like, if there is a God, like, what God would let this happen? I mean, that was pretty much like my early premature thinking. With my dad, it was never a good relationship. right? It was very broken. He wasn't really a fatherly figure to me. He caused a lot of hurt, but he was still my dad. That November, I got a phone call that my dad had overdosed on cocaine, heroin, and methadone. We went into the hospital room and he just had a lot of tears in his eyes, and he said these words. He said, you know, I wasn't the best dad to you, and I know that, and I did the best I could. But he said, I want you to know that I always love you, that you make me so proud. The next morning I got a call at work. Jess, you need to come home. My dad passed away that morning. God did not want me to have to move on and my dad to leave this earth thinking that my dad didn't love me, or, you know, that I had done something wrong, that I wasn't loved. So to me, it was just like the first moment where I felt God speaking to me and through him and through the situation. It seemed like things were going to get better. Very quickly, though, I realized that was not the case. I'm kind of going through and processing everything, still drinking, still partying, still thinking that it's not an issue. And I got a phone call, and it was my best friend at the time, and she said, Jess, you have to come home. She said, your brother was in an accident. He died that night in a car accident 6 months after my dad. That was just like a hope crusher. Like, you can't even process that. I was going to school and I was doing the right thing like by day, but by night I was drinking a lot, you know, and saying like it wasn't an issue because I didn't drink every day. But when I did, it would get out of hand. You know, I would hurt people, I would say hurtful things. And I started to go into grad school, and I got into another really horrible, manipulative, very verbally abusive relationship. I mean, it was obvious very early on. But I just felt like, I don't know, I felt like I deserved all of it. So it didn't like come to my mind to like get out quick, because I was just so lost, so broken. But I lived like this, like months and months and months and months, and then even got engaged to this person and thought like this was going to be my life, like this is what was going to be my life. But God continued to break through, and God said, that is not your life. Through this, I met Christy. She told me about church, and I remember so vividly going for the very, very first time. You know, we showed up, and the worship song that they played was still my favorite song to this day. It was How He Loves Us. The words of the song literally just, after I left that day, they stuck with me. They literally haunted me. Like the words like, he's jealous for me, you know, how he loves us, how he loves us. But those words, he's jealous for me, like, I couldn't escape them. I started to say, like, what does that even mean? What does that mean? Like, does God like want my life? Does he want what I have? So I kept going. I didn't go regular, but I kept going. It kept, you know, I was definitely being called to keep going, but my fiance at the time wasn't. It was getting to the point of just way more verbal abuse, way more manipulation, and I couldn't take it anymore. And I'm like, that's it. Like, I can't do this anymore. I had it. Just get out. Just go. So he left. He disappeared. You know, in the past, like, I turned to different things: alcohol, friends for identity, my job, a man. After calling off the wedding, it was a new season, but a tough season. You know, a lot of fighting who I was and who I wanted to be, and what that looked like in Jesus, and what did that even mean. I went to church every week. I continued to go to therapy because that's what I needed to heal without feeling shame. You know, I needed that for a while because I did start to struggle after calling off that wedding with anxiety, just like loss of control. But to grow, I know I needed to kind of follow the steps of the process to get better and to think clearer, so that God and the Holy Spirit could really start to speak to me and do work in my heart during that season. And then a couple weeks later, in January, Kevin messaged me. So I'm like, oh gosh. But through Kevin, like, I never had been with a godly man before. You know, and through our whole relationship, he shows me just more of who God is, who Jesus is. I mean, through our story, eventually getting engaged and married. I'm not perfect, but I know I am worthy despite being imperfect. Before Kevin's wife, before I'm Judah's. and Camila's mom before I'm a teacher, and just the daughter of an awesome, amazing, loving God that knows me and loves all the broken parts of me, that made me this way, designed me this way, had it all planned, and forgives me every single day and every second that I fall short, because I'm his first.
Well, Kevin, thank you so much for giving us that glimpse into the power of narrative, especially when it comes to helping us rethink identity and move to Christ-centered narratives. A couple interesting questions have come in on chat. How, for students who don't kind of have that amazing or gripping before and after Jesus story, you know, how did you try to frame testimony so that they could value their own testimony, even if it's not quite that much of a roller coaster like your wife's was?
Yeah, so my wife is a small group leader for our senior girls, and so what we did was because that specifically that specifically was shared on one night, and then we had her come up and actually do a Q&A on her story afterwards. And so, yeah. Okay. So what we did was we took a Q&A, and then we had her actually share an update on kind of like what her life looks like now, because we wanted her to be able to share the perspective of her sister's current narrative, and also where her relationship is at with her mother, because those are actually still very messy. So what we wanted to do was kind of like give them two angles to, you know, the narrative, and not let just a one-way testimony be the only thing that they're exposed to.
Yeah.
So her mom is actually in a clinic in Maryland, and she went off kind of the deep end after all the loss, and she doesn't have a relationship with her mother right now. We've reached out to her a bunch of times, and we're still praying through it, right? And so, you know, the what was shared is basically, you know, the same kind of hope that we've found in her story of leaning into Christ is what we want for her mom. And so we're like really pursuing the Lord to that end for this relationship with her mother. And the same for her sister, who is now living with her grandmother, who was the younger one in the picture, has not recovered from all of that, even after 7 to 10 years.
Thank you. Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And I love too how you train students in the course of even how to make the video. So Mike, you were
I just, one thing, Kevin, that stood out for me, just the like, just the video, but knowing your story, and that this is the church that you grew up in, and this is the area where you and your wife are from. You know, it again reminded me of that testimony. It's not something programmatic. It's not a church thing that we do, but it's really about sharing lives. And you know, reminded me of a passage from 1 Thessalonians, that we're delighted to share with you not only the gospel, but our lives as well. And for me, that's something that stood out in that video, that you and your wife, you guys are sharing your lives with these students and with the church, and the permission giving that gives to students to then share their stories. And I think you said at the very beginning, the messy parts of your story, right? And being able to say that, well, that God meets us in the mess. You know, but that's lived out for you, and so, man, that it was powerful. I just want to say thank you, and we've talked. I mean, there's been a lot of ups and downs for you guys this this year as well, and to see God meet you in that has been really, really great. So well done.
Thanks.
Well, thanks, Kevin. All right, I think we're going to turn to our final presentation of the day, final sharing, and that is going to be from Daniel, former FYI intern.
Yeah, Daniel.
So fun that he's part of this cohort. Daniel at the Garden Fellowship. So Take it away, Daniel.
Hi, everyone. My name is Daniel. I am youth pastor at the Garden Church in Chatsworth, California. And for our practice, we did testimony. And for the project, we invited one person to share a testimony in front of the entire group during our regular youth meetings. It's on a Friday night. And so we started by actually having all our leaders share first. This was kind of purposeful so that we can kind of model what sharing testimony would look like, especially in front of a large group for all the students. And the first thing we learned about testimony through that process was actually that the word testimony comes with a lot of expectations. When talking about testimony, people by default, they want to go to their salvation testimony. And even though that's a really good testimony to have and to share, my project partner and I, we knew that that's not exactly the testimony that we were going after, and we wanted something different. And what we were looking for was for our leaders and for our young people to share stories of God moving more in the present, in kind of the mundane things in life, right? Noticing God, because God is working all around us. And when we're following after Jesus, we can become witness to what he's doing around us and through us. And when we share those stories, we want to remind people that God is actually moving on our behalf in our lives, and things are happening, and it's kind of up to us to be more intentional to see how God is moving in the different areas that that we have in our life. And so the first thing we did was we stopped calling the practice testimony because of kind of the expectations that came with that, and we started calling it something else. And I'm going to share our graphic that I have for us. You guys see that? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Where did I present? Here we go. Let's look at it like this. Yeah, so we started calling it I Am Witness. Just changing the terminology, it helped a lot. It got us out of the traditional framework of testimony and what we already knew about testimonies. And it allowed us kind of to reimagine what the practice was going to look like for our community and for our young people. Something that helped was we asked the leaders what we should call it. We kind of gave them the vision for it. Here's what we're trying to do. Here's what we're trying to go after. And my project partner and I, we kind of had some ideas already going into that brainstorm session, but our leaders kind of quickly rejected that, which actually I'm grateful because we're really glad for this I Am Witness that we have here. And when we first started, we wanted all the leaders to go first, but what ended up happening was that students, they quickly started to volunteer. And so these are 3 students that shared an I Am Witness on our Friday night meeting. You see them there. And as we engaged with this practice of testimony, God started moving really quickly, and especially through the stories that we started to share. One of our leaders, he shared testimony about some of God's faithfulness from his times in college, and how at this moment in his life, he felt like God was bringing up that time to remind him of kind of his first love, kind of the things that he was doing at that time. And he felt God was pushing him, saying, I'm going to do that again in your life. Kind of, are you ready for that to happen? And that testimony in itself was great. It was kind of a catalyst for what happened later in that night, because at that night, in small groups, a 9th grader, her name is Samantha, she accepted Christ that night. And kind of coincidentally or not, lo and behold, she was actually wearing a sweatshirt from that leader's college that he was talking about, right? And then a few weeks later, she shared her own witness about God working in her life, and you see her there in the center picture right there. Another night, there was a leader that shared her experience of being prompted by the Holy Spirit to encourage a girl at her school. She didn't know her, but she just felt like she needed to go up to her and tell her that God loves her, that God cares about her. And that same evening, a 7th grade girl, she accepted Christ, and she shared a story of how there was a time in her past where she remembered where she felt God was telling her to go talk to this girl that was sitting alone, but she didn't do it because she was afraid. And since that day, she couldn't see her again, so she missed that opportunity. And she shared with us that she didn't want to miss opportunities like that again, and so she wanted to, start this life of following Christ and listening to God's promptings in her life. And since we started making testimony a regular part of our youth services, 12 people have made a decision to follow Christ.
Wow.
Wow. Wow. Wow.
Wow.
And that's all I have to share. Any questions?
Yeah.
Wow, I was wondering if that was like
Wow.
a dramatic
I
pause.
know.
I mean, it was dramatic. He left us on a
And we
high.
paused. Yes.
Yeah, you dropped
Yeah.
that mic and you just said, "I'm done."
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Again, Dan, it's been such a great pleasure to coach you through this. And what I love about what you shared is because you talked about how there are certain expectations associated with testimony, but I love how God changed and even exceeded and disrupted some of your expectations.
Yeah.
The expectations that you had for what the leaders would experience, the way that students would respond. And man, 12 students making a commitment for Christ over the course of that's, I don't think there's any way you could have expected that at the beginning of this project. Maybe you did, maybe your faith is much greater, right? But to have that happen, beyond what you could expect, that was amazing. So thank you for that.
Just out of curiosity, Daniel, like, what would be the norm? What would be typical in terms of students deciding to follow Jesus in a comparable time period? Like, you know, some ministries, it might normally be 20, but this period it was 12. So,
Yeah.
but I mean, give us a sense for what it would normally be.
I think our experience is really similar to maybe what was shared previously. Those kind of decisions usually come on kind of big moments like a retreat or a missions trip or something like that. But our experience while we're doing testimonies is that these were happening just kind of in small groups, just kind of in the day to day, just like in the I don't want to say the mundane, but like the regular routine of life. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Beautiful. Wow.
So give us a sense for how, given you've seen such amazing fruit come from this, like what does the future look like for you with this practice?
What I would love to do for the future is perhaps capture these stories in a way that's easily shared, like beyond just that one night experience, and to have our young people then share it with their friends, have them share it with those around, or even capture it so that we can share it with the next generation of young people in our church that come up, just so they can also hear these stories and experience, you know, God's movement in the lives of other young people that they see.
Caleb, I love how you phrased this in the chat. It's so interesting how not focusing on conversion stories led to 12 conversions. That is really fascinating.
Yeah, if you have any insight into that, I would love to hear it. I'm just gonna meditate on that probably for the next month.
Yeah,
It's really interesting.
Yeah, I have no idea. It's just when we hear God's stories of God moving, then we want to be a part of that. And so I think that's beautiful. We're seeing young people saying, "Man, God did that in that person's life. I want that to happen in my life, and here's how."
Yeah,
that can happen.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Wow, wow. Thanks, Dan. Thanks so much. Really appreciate it.
Woo!
Really, man. Yes. Way to end the session with conversions. That was remarkable.
Kind of a Billy Graham moment.
I know that was. I feel like I should go forward.
He might become a Christian.
I might. Yeah,
point.
maybe.
So,
right.
It's a prayer.
I know. So even as Daniel was suggesting, I think some of you have all tipped your hand on this, that, these practices really are at the end, but for many of you, the beginning. You're thinking about how to retool them or use them in the near future. And we want to say, please continue to do that. And also, if there's something in your head that's I wonder if FYI would want to know new stories or new ideas that come out of this over the next semester or year, the answer to that is an emphatic yes. Yeah, any ways that you want to keep us posted with the ways that you're letting these things play out, we are incredibly interested in that. So don't hesitate to keep practicing them and keeping us in the loop along the way. So we love that, and thanks for the great work. And Caleb's got a couple of important logistics.
Yeah, so what I want to go over real quick is, I'm getting a little bit of reverb here. I'm not sure why I'm saying James. Let's see. All right. What I want to go over real quick is, like Steve said, we want to keep hearing your stories. We want to learn from you as much as possible. And while this is kind of the culmination of the cohort sharing live with one another, the learning for us doesn't stop here. We know that we're getting just the tip of the iceberg from each of you in these presentations, and we really want to learn everything we can. And so if you can, please make sure by December 20th to take the post-assessment as a point leader, as well as administer that to the participants. Allows us to get a glimpse of, how are they talking about their identity and purpose beforehand and after, and what role the practice played in that. Next, down here, you'll see the instructions for submitting your final report. And so there's a template here about what to write, as well as the final budget template. And some of these things are just kind of go as part of, what it is to, be a part of this project. But also, this is really, we want to learn from you so we can take that learning and see what might bless other churches. What can other churches around the country learn from based off of the work that have already done and the work that you're doing. And so that's really important to add that there. Here, if you had a webinar presentation or any videos, upload that here, as well as there's a zip file link here that we literally want everything you've ever put together for this project. You thought of. If you think, oh, they don't want that, no, we do. We do.
Scribbles.
If you send out parent announcements, postcards,
email, maybe not email.
All the different things you put in your subscription box. Send us as much as you can. We really want to get the fullest picture of what you're doing. It allows us to really learn the most that we can.
We want a fuller picture. See what I did there?
Yeah, that was good.
But most of all, we also just want to say, it's a true pleasure to be able to walk with each of you, to learn from you, and it's just so exciting to see how we go from day one, start listening with your young people at the summit, just starting to come up with ideas, and now we're seeing the fruit of everything that you've done in between. And so I just want to say thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Caleb. Appreciate that. You'll notice a little bit further. Oh, Caleb, just let it go. Also, we've done some other YMI webinar talks this last week. So this will be on recording for you, but also the previous sessions are there as well. So if you want to see what some of your other colleagues have done, we really encourage that. We encourage you to reach out to each other. Perhaps there's certain conversation partners that you currently have or that you'd like to have. As you think about your context of the different practices that were done. So we really encourage you to use this resource to your advantage as you move forward as well. So most of all, we want to just again say thanks. Thanks for investing so deeply this last year in this project. We've been blessed by your work. We know that the stuff that you're going to send us is going to continue to help us hopefully be a blessing to others. And may you just know incredible joy and peace this Advent season. May you know that the work that you do matters, and we truly appreciate you. God bless you all. Grace and peace. Take care.
Blessings.
Thank you.